Hello, and welcome to my book talk. I am Andrea Nichols, and I'm here and I'm going to start discussing some historical fiction. Particularly, the first one I'd like to recommend is The Discovery of Witches. So, do you want mystery and symbolism, Romeo and Juliet level love story, epic sweeping time travel and locations, historically based and scientifically based fantasy and fiction? Fire drakes, witches, vampires, demons, the Crusades, Henry VIII, Queen Elizabeth I, castles, European travel, libraries, and magical books all in one series? Then The Discovery of Witches is the first book in the All Souls trilogy, and it is definitely the one you should try next. It is also currently available on the Libby app. So the story, it normally, there are a few exceptions, but most of the time it's going to focus on our two main first-person narrators, Diana Bishop, a professor of history at Yale, and Matthew Claremont, a very old vampire, doctor, researcher, and geneticist. Diana is the last of the Bishops, a powerful family of witches, but she has refused her magic and also to use it to learn anything about it since her parents died at the age of 7. When a new research project on alchemical manuscripts takes her to Oxford and the Bodleian Library, she finds a book that has been lost for 150 years and is wanted desperately by witches, demons, and vampires. One of the vampires is Matthew Claremont, who seems, unlike the other creatures who are so desperate to get it that they might even kill her, he doesn't seem to want it, but he seems to want to protect her. But why? Is it love? Or is it really just to get to the manuscript? You're going to have to read to find out. As you can see here, the trilogy covers lots of amazing topics and areas that many people like, besides all of the elements I just mentioned. Demons, though, in this series are not some sort of red-skin, horn, pointy-tailed devils, but they are creative, artistic creatures who walk a tightrope between madness and genius. Vampires are described by Deborah Harkness as ancient and beautiful, who feed on blood and will charm you utterly if they don't kill you first. They also tend to be wealthy due to their longevity and their preternatural abilities and senses. They do not sparkle, and that is discussed in a very funny pop cultural reference in the second book of the series. Witches each have a variety of supernatural magical abilities, with no one person being exactly alike in skill level or magical gifts. Well, it contains all of these elements you see here to varying degrees, so you're going to have to read to find out which ones are just major plot points or mentioned in passing. Overall, there is a theme of a strong family supporting and loving each other no matter who, when, and where they are. For example, two of my favorite quotes, and they'll make you cry once you've read the series yourself, are when one character says to another, "But you don't need words to tell me what you feel. I see you, even when you hide from the rest of the world. I hear you, even when you are silent." And there's another point when character one says, "You will not be alone. I will find a way to be with you in the darkness. And when you think the whole world has abandoned you, I will be there holding your hand." To which another character responds, "How could it be otherwise when you are in my heart?" There's very much a human, even with all this fantasy element. It's very emotional. It also has humor. There's another main thread that is over all of 3 books where there's this tension over who is an enemy and who is not, who should be believed, and how to discover what is the truth and what should be done. Hence, this first book's title of A Discovery of Witches. As a result, what begins in the trilogy here in this first book as a sort of cut and dry, black and white scenario, after the characters continue learning and struggling and growing across all 3 volumes, it becomes amazing and complex conclusion that's it's really worthwhile to read to find out how this will end. Overall, while it might sound daunting with all of this time travel and science and history and romance and mystery all in one, it is very well done. I mean, it is a New York Times bestseller after all. There are complex, yet things are complex, but they're explained and they flow smoothly. There are a lot of details, but it's not confusing and it doesn't drag along. It is engaging because of all of this variety, with the complexity making for an engaging plot and characters. You learn about several characters, not just the main two. So it is a kind of like fully fleshed out family unit with not just one romance, not just one event, but multiple characters. So you really get sucked into a full sense of a well-developed world. It is written by a professor of history and history of science. Those are her two main areas, so it's well grounded in what it discusses and how it depicts things. There is humor as well. But one of the other exciting elements is it's not just one book, but you have a whole trilogy. So if you like the first one, you have quite a few more to get through. Also, um, there's other companion books that have started to appear, as you can see, and like many great books, it has just started recently in the last couple of years to be adapted into a TV series. Starts with BBC, but they have opted the US rights over to Sundance Now, Shudder, and AMC. So you do have ways to watch it in the US. Definitely would recommend. You probably recognize some of the actors there from the Nicholas Sparks movie The Choice and Matthew Good from Downton Abbey. Now, let's move on to some other historical fiction books that I'd like to recommend if you wind up liking The Discovery of Witches. Or perhaps you're going to like one of these series, and I would recommend, therefore, in reverse, you go and try out Discovery of Witches. Discovery of Witches does remind me of Jasper Ford's Thursday Next series and The Hunger Games in that there's a lot of cultural, literary, historical cross references and cross book connections, and it's very rich like that. But we're going to look at some more historical fiction related items. So, the Outlander series, of course, been adapted into TV and is available on your Libby app with your library card, is similar in that there's first person narrative, it's historical fiction, there's time travel, there's romance, it's got some suspense, and it is a book to TV series, but it is a bit more graphic and violent than Discovery of Witches is. Another one, particularly like the mystery, the puzzles, kind of like, is there a power behind the curtain? Who's in charge? Should we overthrow them? How can we overthrow them? Referencing kind of history and cultural references and beliefs. All of that. If you like that aspect of the Discovery of Witches, you would probably want to jump next to Dan Brown's Robert Langdon series, which, as you can see, also is another book to TV series, in which Tom Hanks has starred already in 3 different films for it. This, as well, several of these books are available on your Libby app. The next one is kind of a bit more of a stretch, but it does have some similarities in the idea of, there's unlikely allies or opposing species coming together to fight or handle a major problem, a major mystery, something that has to get dealt with. It also, Good Omens covers large swaths of time, just like Discovery of Witches. There's this fight of good versus evil. Witches are also included in Good Omens. And there is a book in Good Omens that's at the, heart of the matter, the crux of the story. But it is different, and it's 2 male leads, and it's much more into sort of this irreverent, dark humor and biblical and Armageddon theme points than the Discovery of Witches ever gets into. And finally, here's some other recommendations. The Witches, if you want to read some nonfiction about the Salem witch trials, which are a part of Discovery of Witches. It is on the Libby app right now, so you can read that with your library card. Some other series, particularly the top row of The Secret History of the Pink Carnation, Kostova, and Anne Rice's works, they all pick up kind of various elements from Discovery of Witches. Secret History of the Pink Carnation will be more towards sort of a Georgian romance genre, but it does have that sort of mystery and history a part of it. Kostova and Anne Rice are going to lean more towards the sort of rich detail, looking at documents, looking at large swaths of time, looking at the vampire side of what you will find in Discovery of Witches. And if you like more fantasy, though, instead of quite so much history or science or, documents and books and libraries, then you might want to go look more towards Nora Roberts' Circle trilogy, with starts with Morgan's Cross, and of course Jacqueline Carey's Cashieles series. Both of those will have history, but it leans more towards fantasy. So those are my recommendations, and thank you so much for joining in with me today.